Oh, we're good. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think we're live. It like takes a hot second to like, catch up to everything. So good morning, everyone. Um, if you're a bookkeeper filing 1099s, should bookkeepers file 1099s? Do they have to file 1099s? And then if you do, what does that look like? So I had a client ask me or tell me this morning, um, he's working with another bookkeeper, and he told me in email form that he didn't realize that it was the bookkeeper's job to file 1099s. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that's what the conversation he had with his bookkeeper, because she probably normally does, but I don't know if it's true. Actually, I know that it's not true that bookkeepers are the ones that file 1099s. And I think as a bookkeeper, you don't, I just want to give bookkeepers permission. You don't have to file 1099s.
Definitely.
You can leave that to the tax preparer, but if you do and you want to offer that service, or if you feel like you've been offering that service and you're okay with offering it, how do we make it less of a drowning feeling? There was a thread yesterday, and someone posted like they were drowning in a sea of like water, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, today's the last day. And then does it have to be that way? Like, what expectations can we set for clients that make it better? So I think we're just going to chat about how we do it. And because this year I actually felt less stressed about 1099s than I saw all the threads. But that was not the case last year. So, okay, let's start. Bookkeepers do not have to file 1099s. I just kind of addressed that. Like, so I won't make you, if that's what you're listening for, you can jump off, but hopefully we're going to get into pricing and all of those things. So hopefully you stick around. But so one, it is optional. You do not have to. You should not feel obligated to file 1099s. Did you feel obligated, Megan, when you first got started to file 1099s?
Yes, but I
There's
think
like a, yeah.
I think it was just because of how we like some programs and coaches and stuff like they make it seem like you have to do it.
Yeah.
And even some clients, they just I mean, like who you were talking about earlier, they're just under the assumption or that's how it's always been done before or whatever.
Yeah. In the case of my client, he truly doesn't know who should be doing what. So he was just trying to make sure he was taken care of. And then it led to some confusion because
Right.
right? Like, so it's not like, that's also not anything to represent him incorrectly or anything like that. It's just, I don't think clients know. They don't
They
know
don't.
who they're going to. And so if you don't offer them, it's as simple as saying, hey, we don't offer that as a service. We recommend using your tax preparer. But what a lot of, and I think this is actually key to finding your ideal clients, because if you say that and you know that you're not going to do them because that doesn't fit your life, like your goals in your business. So I'm hoping I'm giving someone like freedom in their business today with this. Like, if it doesn't fit your lifestyle and you say, I'm not going to file them, work with your tax preparer to do so, because tax preparers do. I know the CPA in our group, I know that their firm does them all day long. And they're like, well, I don't have one. I use TurboTax. Honestly, that's a red flag, right? Like, because if you're running a business that's over 6 figures, you really need to have someone looking out for you from a tax perspective. And I know so many TurboTax returns that CPAs I work with or amending. So if you say TurboTax to like a CPA, they're like, I'm going to have to amend your past 2 or 3 returns, like automatically. Like, that's the perspective on it. Is that always the case? No, but that it probably means you didn't maximize what you could have had go on in your tax situation. So honestly, it could be a red flag. And that could be one way to determine, like, do you have the tax support you need to really make use of this bookkeeping I'm doing for you? Not that that's like the end all be all, but like if we're doing bookkeeping, there's two goals. One, to help them manage their business better from a management standpoint, which is why we do timely reports and all of those things. The second thing is to give them like an audit defense, solid tax return, like solid books that they can use for tax prep. The benefit of that, if they have solid bookkeeping, then their tax preparer, if in the case of an audit, is going to be able to use those documents, those organizational documents, and say, hey, IRS auditor, and the business owner is never going to have to talk to them.
Right.
But if they don't, then you're going to be getting the client who's like, oh my gosh, I just got a letter from the IRS. And the list goes on, right? And now, they're kind of blaming you that they got a letter, and it's not your fault that they got a letter from the IRS. But so having a good tax team just shields you from like what your role is and what their role is. 1099s can be an identifying factor on if they have the good support system in place. Just so that. But then you said, I don't remember who it was, but in that same thread that we were talking about that you started, someone's like, I'm going to charge $1,000.
Yep.
So at 1099s, I see the gamut of pricing where it's like $6 a return, or $6 a form, $25 a form, $50 a form, $100 startup fee, setup fee, whatever. Like the pricing is really all over the place with 1099s. I will say with the software I use, I think I average about $6 like a company. $6 to $12 for like 1 to 5 returns, depending on how many they have. But what would you say to pricing? So if a bookkeeper's saying, well, okay, I want to offer them because I feel, or I want to, hopefully I want to offer them because I want to. I want to have the confidence, and I want to overcome this like hurdle that it feels like I've got. They want to file them. What would you say? How do you approach pricing?
So I have been charging just per 1099. And then I also have like one price if we're emailing them, just because I'm using Track 1099. So they charge me one price if we're just filing electronically. And then if they have to mail it, it's a different price. So I usually add on to that. But yeah, per filing is how I do it. My prices have changed throughout the last 5 years, and every time I increase, I'm like, oh, clients are not going to want to do it at that price, but they never even bat an eye. The same ones continue to do them. So
I've seen the same thing. I think the first year I did them, in some Facebook group, they said $6 a return or whatever.
yeah.
I don't know if I even made any money that year doing them.
I know. Yeah, I did $10, I want to say, my first year, and I was like, yeah, I will not do that again.
No. So definitely look at costs. I didn't know where to file them at. So I think I like said, hey, here's the rate to the client before I knew how I was going to file them.
Right.
And then, so don't do that. So Megan just said she uses Track 1099. I've used Tax 1099. Both integrate with the workflow software we recommend, Keeper. QuickBooks Online also allows you to file them. Not my preferred choice. I've done it for a client before, and there's just always I don't have as much control over the 1099 process as I do in the other two softwares.
Exactly.
So just something to consider. And then the price really stays about the same. You can see all the pricing before you send out your engagement letters. So price is a little up to you. I charge now $100 setup because we spend a lot of time going, are we going through? So we only do setup if we're going through and like evaluating all of the vendors and the amounts. Like if we're generating the information, then we charge a setup fee. If the client's saying, hey, here's all the 1099s we need to file, here's the amount, then we just charge the per form. Because I'm not having to go back and forth. So that's a recommended. And now I'm like at $20 a form. I think that might go up next year again. Because I didn't raise my rate this year. I just stayed
Yeah.
this. Um,
I charged 30.
good time. Cool. That's probably more worth it. um, but I do not regret what I charged this year. I think it was fine. Because we also charged the base rate, so I think it was fine.
Yeah, and
Um,
I don't charge the base rate.
yeah,
I just do the purple one.
yeah. I think both are good options. I think it really depends on you and how you like to communicate. Because pricing sometimes is based on like how we communicate, what we're comfortable defending, what we're comfortable saying, hey, there's value in this.
Gotcha.
Um, you also want to be profitable, right? You don't want to end the year and say, okay, here was my 1099 expenses, here was my income, and oh, by the way, I had a contractor help me, and now you're not profitable at all, right? Like we want to pay attention to all of that, and we can plan it ahead of time for the most part. Um, the other thing I would say is, what does that process look like? So I think in 1099s, I was asked last night, are 1099s separate from your monthly bookkeeping? 100% yes, I think so. I think you can also roll them up into it. So I've had a client before where I just said, hey, we're going to also do your 1099s. And so here's like I'm including it in your monthly rate. You could absolutely do that. But if you don't do that and you don't have it in your engagement letter, then it becomes a separate engagement. So engagement letters serve to reduce miscommunication between you and your clients so that they know exactly what you're filing, exactly for the time period you're filing, and what you will or will not do, what you will or will not do if there's issues. So all of that's laid out in the engagement letter. I do send, so we have the engagement letter when they sign on for bookkeeping. Unless they're like a tax and bookkeeping client, 1099s are not included in the engagement. And so in December, I send out, hey, here's, let me know if you need them. Then we send out an engagement letter. And then so I pull all the reports, start asking vendors, all of those things. I send them once we have all of the information, I send that to the client and I say, can you review and confirm that this information is correct? There's a couple of ways you could do this. So I confirm, is this information correct? Every now and again, I'll have a client say, I have a different number. Okay, why? Like, because that gives us two pieces of information. What are we not getting for the bookkeeping, right? Or what is he missing from his information? Like, because that also tells me there's a management issue if we have two different numbers. So how can I help support? Like, it gives me a problem solving opportunity.
Right.
In addition to just getting 1099s out. The next thing I do, so I get all that information, we enter it. I actually take an extra step of downloading the PDFs and sending it to the clients to review. Because what I see that catches, this is just me personally, I think this is an extra step. As long as you have their approval on something, I think you're good. So whether it's the first step or the second step, I just don't like entering it and then having to re-enter it if they're like, hey, the number changed, like we think it's a different number. But I like to have them see their name, the contractor's name, and say, what, does this all look right? I have a couple of clients. So this started because of a couple of clients. But now it tells me, like, okay, you reviewed the social security number or their EIN. So you cannot come back to me with new information. But I even had someone do that this year, and that's okay. We can change it, no big deal. But it does, like, before we submit it, can we get the information right the first time as
Right.
much as possible? And I did have someone who said, oh, their EIN is wrong on their W-9. We need to change that. I think that's an extra step, optional extra step. I don't know if it matters. And then I do the full gamut. I email it, I mail it. I don't give them an option. I just mail it, email it. So I do all the things and then like send it out. So, but this year, I gave them a very clear timeline. So I wanted everything by like the 6th of the month. And then we sent everything out on the 15th. I gave that same calendar to my team and said, hey, this is what I expect. it never fails. There's always someone or something that goes wrong, like the week of 1099s. Do you
Yep.
experience that?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I feel like I have one client who it's like the last 2 years, it's the same thing. Like they just don't have all the 1099, W-9s and all the things. And I tell all the client, like, before you even write them a check, get a copy. But yeah, same issues. So,
Yeah. Um, this year I have kind of a repeat client who's doing that, which is okay. We can work with them.
yep.
It just delays the process. And so we try for those clients as soon as possible to make sure we're getting those W-9s. And what has helped in my business is we do use Keeper. There's a 1099 feature that you can review throughout the year. So if you're looking to say, I will never, like if someone's listening to this and they're like, I do not want to have that issue at year end ever, if I can avoid it. Um, then you can use Keeper to monitor, do you have a W-9 on file? So you see that they paid a new vendor, you're going to reach out to the client, hey, can I get their W-9? They're going to be like, oh, I don't have that because I paid them without asking first. Because you can tell them best practice is to get a W-9 first before you pay them. You can tell them that till you're like cannot breathe, right?
Right.
Um, they still won't get it. Like some will say, oh, that's the best practice. Okay, let me start doing it. Others just cannot implement it in their season right now. So you can check it off as you go throughout the year, or do it once a quarter and say, hey, I don't have W-9s for these people, and contact your client and say, can I go ahead and get them? That way you have them on file at year end. Then you're just checking to see if anything changed. Like, hey, can you reach out? Like, did any of this information change? Are you aware that any of it changed? Because sometimes it does. People buy houses in November and move before 10 season. So, but if they have an updated one, you should get it. Anyway, so those are some ways to kind of. Do you have to? No. Are there ways to make it better? Yes. Can you price to make it worth your time? Yes. Is that a really nice summary?
Yep, most definitely.
Get approvals from the client before you send it out. I did just have a client whose bookkeeper sent it out and didn't get any sort of approval, and he had additional information he didn't yet get to her. So there was like a confusion. Confusion can be avoided with clear communication and not waiting till the last minute to, like, for you. The client might, if the so real quick before oh yeah, we gotta go. So anyway, I will see you guys in a bit. Bye.
Bye.